Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today my name as always is Andy, and today it's time to look back over today's Belgium Formula 1 Grand Prix. And as you can see from the picture on the screen, there was quite a bit of incident during this race, certainly at the start, but we will be getting on to that in due time because there's quite a bit to cover off before we even get to the race itself, because this was of course the first race back after the summer break. And quite a bit happened during the summer break, so we're going to recap that off first before we get into the actual weekend action. And to start off that period, obviously during the summer break, I did do my F1 review of the transfer market window, and obviously we found out Daniel Ricciardo had decided to leave Red Bull to go to Renault, which surprised everybody. That obviously puts Sainz at drive. He's now going to be going to McLaren, which I predicted, but I did not predict Alonso leaving to likely go to IndyCars. Gasly got promoted to Red Bull, which I did predict as well. And at the moment, Ocon looks like he's going to be out of drive at the moment because everything that's been going on with Force India. So an awful lot going on beforehand. And then obviously when the teams got to Spa, there's pictures of the Force India trucks with no sponsorship logos or anything on it at all. And there was talk that they might not even be able to race because the deal with Lawrence Stroll and his consortium to take over the team was originally for a full sale entry and everything. And then due to delays, which was down to 13 Indian banks, I believe it was, given they all had to give the okay for the sale, linked to Vijay Mallya. And that didn't come through in time, so it ended up being an asset sale where Stroll and the consortium bought all the assets, so the factory, the cars, taking on the personnel, basically had everything except for the entry, because that entry lay with Sahara Force India. So over the weekend period, it was obviously getting, before Friday, it was all sorted, thankfully. Force India is now known technically as Racing Point Force India, with a consortium being called Racing Point. And it did get resolved, but it means one good bit for them is they get to keep all the prize money they've made over the last few years as Force India. The teams have now agreed to that, but only on the proviso that they remove all of the championship points gained so far this season. So they are back to scratch zero, nada, nothing as of this weekend. And obviously there's rumours behind it all as well that Lance Stroll, who's currently at Williams, Lawrence's son obviously, is going to be in the Force India possibly as early as next week at Monza, which is then going to see Ocon moved out. There was talk of Ocon going to McLaren to replace Van Dorn going to Sauber to replace Ericsson, and Robert Kubica moving into the second Williams seat. But who knows what's going to happen, because rumour is Ocon's had a seat fitting at McLaren in behest of this, and he's too big for it. He's too big. He's the tallest driver on the grid, Ocon, so God knows what's going to happen. We shall see what goes on, obviously coming up to next week. Moving into the sessions itself, all three of the free practice sessions were led by Ferrari, with Raikkonen and Vettel. Mercedes not too far behind. Very little happened in practice except for FP1 seeing Lando Norris get his debut run on a Grand Prix weekend. Done pretty well. He actually done a better time than Van Dorn, which is not good for the Belgium. And then Van Dorn himself had a big spin in pre-practice free, catching up to Valtteri Bottas, who was running quite slowly. And Bottas got a reprimand for it, but apart from that, there was nothing else major from FP3. The only other bit we knew before practice was that both Valtteri Bottas and Nico Hülkenberg would be taking on brand new engines for the weekend, and no matter what happened in qualifying, they would start towards the back of the grid. Q1 seen a bit of a surprise in terms of Carlos Sainz being put out in Q1. The Spaniard, who is going to be moving to McLaren in place of his hero and fellow countryman Alonso next year, struggling around the Belgium track, while both McLarens and both Williams were out in Q1 as well. And I seen an interesting tweet. If you had shown an F1 fan from the 80s and the 90s that the McLarens and the Williams would be the slowest cars in the grid, they would have thought you were in a different time paradox of some description, but it just shows you how far away they two are right now. Q2, Hulkenberg didn't bother running because obviously he's going to be at the back anyway, and both the Salbas and both the Toro Rossos dropped out of that session. Bottas did make Q3, predominantly I'm guessing to help Hamilton with the slipstream, and that never happened because of the rain and Bottas spinning through Blanchimont as all the cars went out on dry tyres, but the rain came too soon and they all headed for the pits. The Force Indias carried on. Perez had a huge moment as he headed up the hill after going through Eau Rouge and up towards over the hill at Radion. Do not come back to me with that WTF moment, by the way, I'm not having it. But he managed to keep it out of the wall and made it back to the pits. And then Raikkonen and the Red Bulls were under-fueled, so they never got out for the last part when the track was driest. But Hamilton was the one that pulled out the pole position 7 times clear on the drying track from Vettel. Ocon and Perez P3 and P4, fantastic for the team considering everything that went on during the week and the lead up. Grosjean in 5th, Raikkonen was 6th, Red Bulls 7th and 8th. But yeah, it was really interesting. And then after the session, another bit I caught on Twitter was Ocon and Vettel talking in French. Now, I know Vettel's fluent in many languages. I didn't realise French was one of them. But basically, Ocon pretty much confirmed almost that he's not going to be at Force India next year, with Vettel asking, who is it? And Ocon's answer was the one who bought the team. And when asked about the second seat, well, he also brings money as well. So he's, in a way, it would be shocking if he was out, but he's driving for his career right now, which is terrible. But yeah, we'll see how that one goes. It links back to the transfer market rumours to start with. On to the race itself, and before the race, Carlos Sainz and Stoffel van Dorn also took new engines, meaning they were on the last row, promoting Bottas and Hulkenberg up a row. Not that it did Nico Hulkenberg any good at the start, though, because on the run down to turn 1, La Source, carnage, and it's the carnage you see on the screen. Hulkenberg, he has admitted he made the mistake himself. He missed his braking point, and clean into the back of Fernando Alonso in the McLaren. Alonso's car up and over the top of Charles Leclerc's Sauber. The car actually hit the halo. The car caught the halo. I've not been the biggest fan of the halos, I will be honest, but they've proved their worth this weekend. By a long way, they have proved their worth. And it's definitely been something that, yeah, you've seen the damage, the tyre marks. If that hadn't been there, that was Leclerc's helmet. That was his head. So definitely an interesting point there. Hopefully that'll put to bed the rumour, the haters of the halo. I wasn't a big fan at first, but I can see now another part of it which is showing they do work. But that put out Hulkenberg, Alonso and Leclerc. During that, Alonso did catch the rear wing off Daniel Ricciardo, so that cost him his rear wing. Ricciardo then hit the back of Raikkonen, damaged his front wing, gave Raikkonen a puncture, damaged his rear wing, the floor, the whole lot. Safety car came out, but before that came out on the run up to Les Combes, Vettel got past Hamilton and then 4 wide at one point with the 2 Force Indias in between, both backing out. But Vettel took the lead just before the safety car came out, and that was going to be crucial moving forward. I'll just take a quick moment. I see Abraham. Hi there. Thank you very much for the comment. Thank you for listening, my friend. But yeah, safety car came out. Ricciardo pitted. He did get his rear wing replaced in about 5-10 minutes. Awesome job from Red Bull, but he rejoined 2 laps down. They were hoping for another safety car or indeed some rain. Raikkonen pitted to get rid of that puncture. Bottas pitted as well for a new front wing, but he didn't change tyres. Now, he crashed into the back of the Williams off, I believe it was Sirotkin, going into last source during that melee into turn 1. But he didn't change tyres, whereas Raikkonen did. He went on the mediums. Van Dorn tried to go on the mediums to run the whole race, but that failed for him. We'll come back to that later on. And the race restarted on lap 5. It was Vettel from Hamilton, Perez, Ocon. Verstappen was 5th, Grosjean 5th, Magnussen 7th, Gasly 8th, Ericsson 9th, and Sirotkin was in 10th at this point as well. Now Hamilton looked to go for it at the inside into the bus stop, but it was the wrong time for it. Maybe Vettel dropped off the power a little bit just to try and prevent Hamilton from getting a run through La Source, Naples Rouge, Radion and into Les Combes, and it worked as Vettel was far enough ahead, and then he just slowly pulled the gap out pretty quickly of around about 3 seconds and maintained it there. We've seen Verstappen pass Ocon. He went for the outside line and went to the inside to make the actual pass. That was a couple of laps after the restart using DRS. Bottas through Eau Rouge and up over the top of Radion on the side-by-side with Brendan Hartley, reminiscent of Mark Webber on Fernando Alonso about 6-7 years ago. Phenomenal pass from the Finn as he came through the field. Raikkonen came into the pits on lap 8. Made some adjustments, went back out, but he retired a few laps later due to the damage. DRS was stuck open by that point, I believe, as well. And Vettel just kept the gap at around 3 to 4 seconds, set a couple of fastest laps back to back, and just maintained the distance between him and Hamilton in second. By lap 10, Verstappen easily passed Perez under DRS for P3. He would stay there for the rest of the race, wouldn't see much of him. Lap 12, Bottas was finally in the top 10 after getting past both the Williams, with Sirotkin dropping out the top 10. He's still without points, the Russian. And then around about lap 15 to 17, Hamilton started to get a couple of back-to-back fastest laps of his own, started to reel in Vettel, but couldn't quite get close enough before the pit stops came about. So it was just one of those ones. He had really big blisters in the middle of the left rear tyre as well, which obviously caused a few problems obviously as well. And he just couldn't catch up, so he continued to keep pushing but couldn't do it. By this point, Bottas was up to P8, passing Ericsson and Gasly, and then Hamilton was the first of them to pit on lap 22, put the soft tyres on. Vettel pitted the next lap onto the softs as well to cut off the undercut. He rejoined, still in the lead. Hamilton was behind Verstappen, but passed him on the run up to Les Combes after Vettel exited the pits. And it had worked initially because he was within about a second and a half of the German, but as soon as the German was onto the new tyres, boom, away he goes, and that was it. We never really seen much more of that for the rest of the race. Grosjean came in a few laps after the leaders, and that kind of started a flurry of pit stops. Most of them moving from the super soft to the softs. That included Verstappen, who stayed P3 in both the Force Indias, who rejoined P5 and P6 once it all balanced itself out. And Hartley and Ericsson had a decent battle around about lap 28, 29, passing and repassing each other in the La Sauce up to Les Combes. A good wee battle between they two before Hartley decided to make a pit stop. And then the last 14, 15 laps of the race, there wasn't very much going on, apart from Bottas catching up to the Force Indias. Ricciardo finally retired in lap 31. That rain and safety car just weren't coming, so they just decided not to run the parts any more than they needed to. Bottas passed Ocon for P5 under DRS in lap 32, and then he got Perez on lap 40 again under DRS on the way up to Les Combes, and Bottas would set the fastest lap of the race as well, a 1:46.2, which is a new race lap record, but the overall lap record is still held by that monstrous Porsche 919 Evo, because the rain in Q3 meant we never seen these cars quite hit full speed. But it was to be a win, and quite a controlled race from Sebastian Vettel, as he took his 52nd career win. That puts him third in the overall win standings, put him ahead of Alain Prost. He's only behind Hamilton and of course Michael Schumacher, who's on 91. Got the job done on lap 1 and on the restart as well, and just controlled the race from there. He was given the F1.com Driver of the Race award by the fans, and it was Ferrari's first win at Spa since Raikkonen took win in 2009. Hamilton was in second, passing the lead. This didn't have the pace. That Ferrari engine upgrade seems to be something special, and Hamilton afterwards was very down in the dumps because Monza's next, and obviously that's a power track, so looks like Ferrari have finally got the upper hand on Mercedes when it comes to engine power, finally, so we will see how that one works next week. Verstappen was in third, avoided the mess at turn 1 by going to the inside, got past the Force Indias, and then was just hoping it would rain, but it obviously never did. He finished a good 30 seconds behind the leaders. Bottas was fourth. Now, he was my driver of the day personally, came through from 18th on the grid to take P4, didn't pitted for the front wing change, and then obviously didn't pit and take tyres at that time, and then pitted later on. Caught up to the Force Indias before the end. That move on Hartley was brilliant, pass of the race obviously, and I think he done very well to do the best he could from there. Obviously helped by Raikkonen retiring, meaning he didn't have to try and pass his fellow Finn, and Ricciardo being down the field as well. Perez and Ocon, solid races. Perez getting ahead of Ocon in lap 1 and staying there. Great points for what is the new team on the grid, and it means they're already ahead of Williams in the Constructors' Championship. Both of them solid races. Ocon could have taken the lead on lap 1 if he'd just been a bit more braver, but he probably took the sensible option. Grosjean and Magnussen were next up in 7th and 8th. Again, they avoided the mess into turn 1. Didn't quite have the pace of the Force Indias, about 5 to 10 seconds down on them, but again they won't mind at some solid points. Gasly took home 9th. Good solid race from the Frenchman, showing the reason why Red Bull have promoted him up in place of Sainz, picking up points when it's presented itself to him once again. And Marcus Ericsson took the final point for P10. Quite punchy, as I said earlier on, with Hartley mid-race, kept it clean for the last point. Sainz was 11th. He started on the mediums from 19th, but that tyre was just not a good race tyre. Lost a lot of time due to that. And he finished outside the points once again. Sirotkin once again beating Stroll, and this is the part that as the season goes on, I'm starting to feel sorry for Sergei Sirotkin. He's probably not going to end up with points this year unless something happens at like Singapore or something. And yet Stroll's going to get promoted up to Force India, no doubt, because he's dad and money. So yeah, I'm starting to feel more and more sorry for the Russian as time goes on. Stroll, he'll just be hoping to get in a Force India seat as soon as possible. He finished in P13. Hartley 14th. He ran a long first stint on the soft tyres before going to super softs. Couldn't quite have the full pace to keep the strategy going. He did have a slow pit stop as well. And Van Dorn was last. I think he was last in every session, which is not good. And with all this talk at Ocon possibly taking his seat alongside Sainz for next year, possibly even alongside Alonso for the end of the year, and Lando Norris in the wings as well. He had a great couple of F2 races, a good FP1 outing as well, so it's not looking good for the Belgium right now, and it was another disappointing race once again for him. Retirees, Ricciardo, he got caught, took his rear wing off with Alonso flying through the air at the first lap. He was 2 laps down, tried to run in the hope of rain or safety car, never happened, so they retired in lap 31. Raikkonen was caught by Ricciardo into turn 1, puncture, caused damage to the rear wing, the floor, the bodywork and everything as well. He'd retired, I think it was lap 10. It was just not, the balance wasn't there. DRS eventually stuck open as well, I believe. Leclerc, lucky escape, but again, the halo doing its job. He was an innocent victim of Hulkenberg's mistake. Alonso, again, the other innocent victim of Hulkenberg's mistake into turn 1, flying through the air and probably just counting down the races now to Abu Dhabi so he can finish up. And Hulkenberg was the one who made the mistake. He's admitted to that, and while I've been recording, it's came through on a notification on my phone. Hulkenberg has a 10 place grid penalty for the next race at Monza next Sunday due to his, him causing that first turn incident. Couldn't think what I was going to say there, but I eventually got it out. So a 10 place grid penalty for the German next time round at Monza, and that is not the kind of penalty they're going to be wanting at a track where they're easily down on horsepower compared to Ferrari and Mercedes. What does that do for the championship? Well, Hamilton still leads the Drivers' Championship, but his lead is now 17 points from 24, 231 to 214 to Vettel. Raikkonen is still third on 146. Bottas now just 2 points behind him in fourth, and Verstappen has jumped Ricciardo by a few points, fifth and sixth. Hulkenberg is still seventh, leading Formula B, if you want to call it that, with Magnussen just a couple of points behind now in that fight for best of the rest. In the constructors, Mercedes 375, Ferrari just 15 behind on 360, Red Bull on 238, sitting on their own in third. Renault are still on 82, no points this weekend from the French team. Haas now closing in on 76, so that's getting closer. And as I say, Force India lost all their points, now on 18, so they're ninth now. They've already overtaken Williams, which, because of how Williams have been this year, didn't take much. And they're only 1 point behind Sauber, and it could quite easily, a couple of races like this, get themselves back up to just behind the likes of McLaren, Haas and Renault before the year is out. But that is it for another race review for the 2018 Formula 1 season. If you did like listening through the race review from myself, do hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to see more of these. I will be putting them out as the rest of the season goes on. Some other content coming up over time as well. Got a few more classics to go through now with a certain new Formula 1 game that's came out, so I'll be looking into doing that in the near future. Next week is the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Now, I've got obviously a few changes going on myself personally, so the race review might be out on Sunday evening, but if not, it will be out by Tuesday due to work and family commitments. But the race review will still happen, so do look out for it. And as I say, if you do hit subscribe, you'll be notified if you hit the bell icon of what day that I do get around to being able to do it. But that is it from me. Thank you very much. Until the next video. My name is Andy, and I'll see you again soon. Ta-ra.